Happy draft week, everybody. We're 48 hours away from the NBA draft, round one on Wednesday. Of course, the Sacramento Kings have the 13th overall pick. We don't know what the Kings are going to do. Maybe they're considering drafting Purdue star big man Zach Edey. They had him in Sacramento recently for a workout. And when you talk about polarizing figures, this guy is all over the place when it comes to where he's going to be drafted. Some guys have him mocked in the lottery. Some guys have him mocked late first round. We don't know what Zach Edey's going to do, where he's going to go, and if his game will translate to the NBA in the way that many are hoping it will. However, someone who has a pretty good understanding of how Zach has developed and how he's grown and what he can be as a basketball player is Sam King, who covered him all 4 years at Purdue. He joins me right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off season long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. The playoffs have winded down. The sports are stopping to sport the way that we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking all customers up with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everybody every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here of Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And not long ago, I had Zach Edey on my short list of players that I wouldn't hate seeing the Kings draft at 13. Of course, I still am of the belief that the Kings should be looking to shop and try and trade the 13th overall pick. I've not changed my belief on that whatsoever. But Zach Edey is intriguing to me. I'm going to share with you my updated thoughts and feelings on the Kings drafting Zach and everything in the last segment of this podcast today, because I want to get to my conversation with Sam King right away. Sam has covered Zach all 4 years at Purdue. He's going to provide us with a lot of really interesting and good perspective on who Zach was when he came into the league versus who he is now, National Player of the Year, coming out of the league and the success that he's had. Of course, he's an older prospect, a true senior coming into Sacramento, or coming into the NBA draft, maybe into Sacramento, but he's got the size. I mean, 7'4". You can see elements of his game that probably will translate to the NBA naturally just because of how big he is. But there's also things in the NBA like the speed and his ability to play defense and everything like that might be a struggle for him, right? Well, Sam King is going to give us an idea of who Zach is as a person, of course, who he is as a player, how he's seen Zach develop over the years, and how that might translate to the NBA. I hope you enjoy this conversation. What is the vibe like right now around Purdue? What is the expectation for Zach, and how just excited is Boilermaker Nation to see Zach make his NBA dreams come true?
Yeah, I think that, this guy's a fan favorite, unlike anything I've ever seen. Purdue's had a lot of really good players over the years and had a great program for a long time. But Zach Edey was a guy that I would go after a game, go to the press conference, do my, write up some stories and do some videos, podcasts, whatever it may be, and be walking out of the arena 2.5 hours later. And Zach is still out in the arena signing autographs for fans. And he signed every autograph, took every photo with a fan for 4 years. And, especially as his star power continued to rise, those autograph requests and picture requests became more and more, to the point where it's almost like it felt like 15,000 people every home game. And then, 100 every road game were wanting to get a piece of him, and he was willing to do that. So that's kind of the human being that he is. Clearly, when you think of recent NBA players from Purdue, the most recent one is Jaden Ivey, who, maybe at the time was somebody that Sacramento was looking at that 4 spot, I think, a couple years ago, and went with Murray instead. But Jaden Ivey was when he came to Purdue, everybody knew. Caleb Swanigan before that, everybody knew this guy's going to the NBA. It's just a matter of, is he going to be at Purdue for 1 year, 2 year, 3 years? Zach Edey came in pretty raw, only having played organized basketball for a couple of years in high school. And it was kind of like, we don't know what we have. Here's a guy with a massive body, but what do you do with it? And Purdue started to refine and figure out how to use that to best suit Purdue. And, over the last 2 years, he's been the most dominant player in college basketball in many, many years, probably decades. So now it's a matter of, does what he can do well translate to the NBA?
And and we'll talk about that too, but the domination that he ended up getting to, that dominant level, of course, his size and his body has something to do with that. Those things that you can't necessarily measure, right? It's a God-given gift, but he also improved tremendously just as a basketball player and as just understanding the game and his skills from his freshman year to where he is at now. From your perspective, how much has he grown? What has that journey been like watching him develop into this NBA capable talent?
Yeah, and I think that Purdue coach Matt Painter has said this many times. Zach Edey wasn't recruited with the high star rankings or everybody telling him how great he was, because as a high school player he was averaging 2 points a game and wasn't being used a whole lot. So it was more of a kind of a project, and Purdue's had its share of these 7 foot plus guys over the years. Nobody quite to Zach Edey's size, but he came to Purdue willing to learn and saying, hey, I don't honestly know a whole lot about basketball, and I trust you to help me become the best player that I can be. That turned out to be a really darn good player, obviously, but he's 7'4". I think he measured at the combine without shoes on. He's a massive human, but not only that, he's built. He's not, he doesn't have like a Kevin Durant frame. He's got some bulk on him. And he's heavy, and you talk to people who played against him. That's the one thing you hear about why he's so unstoppable, is when he leans into you, you're kind of at his mercy. You're not going to stop him from posting up because he's so strong and so heavy. And then he's just, over the years, like you said, gotten better at learning how to go to the left, or knowing where to feel a guy and turn the way that he's not and get an easy bucket out of it. And his offense has improved tremendously, to the point where he's almost unstoppable, which is probably why he's being looked at so high in the NBA draft. I think that no matter what, you're going to be able to put him in a game and get use out of him on the offensive end. But yeah, you're right. He, just from an understanding of the game, that's where it came probably the furthest, is understanding why we're doing this or what I can do in the situation. He became a guy that really got a lot better as a passer when he came to Purdue. When the ball got thrown into the paint to him previously, he never had to pass it, because it was like, okay, we're throwing the ball in the post to you to go score. And at Purdue, he had to learn that over time, as he became a better player and got double teamed, triple teamed, different gadget defenses trying to center around him, not beating teams, how to become a better passer. You saw his assist numbers go up. You saw also his steal numbers go up, just the savviness as a defender and getting blocked shots. He's a very good free throw shooter, which he had to become, because teams just started to foul him, because you'd rather give him 2 free opportunities from the free throw line than an automatic dunk or a layup every single time. So he's grown in a lot of ways and expanded his game, probably beyond what we've even seen on game film, because the way he was used at Purdue was, you're this unstoppable 7'4", 7'5" guy in the paint. We're going to throw it to you down low, and you're either going to score or you're going to kick it back out to a guard that's going to be wide open for a 3, and we're going to get 3 points that way.
You mentioned the free throw shooting, a huge jump between his sophomore and junior year, up from 64% from the free throw line to 73%, nearly a 10% increase, while shooting almost 3 free throws more per game. That is a tremendous amount of growth just in one season from the foul line, which is encouraging, considering if his game translates to the NBA level, and if he's playing significant minutes at the NBA level with his size and physicality, he's probably going to take a trip or two to the foul line every single game. But Sam, I know you know this, covering basketball. They say the modern style of basketball is the guards league, right? In the NBA, it's a guards league. Guards are the most important, and guards are featured. In the days of the traditional big man are over. And yet you have Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic winning MVP after MVP after MVP. And you have big men like Zach Edey every year coming into the draft, and people going, oh God, like with the size and the height, you can almost not pass it up because it's just these things you can't, like I said, you can't measure. You just have to, if you can have a player with these God-given gifts, like you take that and hope that it works. So big men have always been so polarizing. Zach's size makes it no different. But kind of from your read of watching him over the last 4 years, understanding, of course, there's a big jump from college to the NBA. Most players try and make that jump at 19, 20 years old. Zach is making it well into his 20s now and firmly into kind of more of an NBA body. How much of an advantage do you think is that going to give him in transitioning his game into the NBA right away?
Yeah, and the thing that I hear a lot is, if this is 1995, he's the number one pick in the draft or whatever, and
right.
Now he can't shoot, he can't play defense, he's not fast enough, things like that. All things that I think at the NBA Combine, he kind of proved those people wrong a little bit with his, with his sprint and then with his 3-point shooting. He's a guy that for years you would go into practice after practice when he's just messing around, and he'll sit there and hit 10 threes in a row. He'll shoot 20 threes and hit 14 of them. And you're thinking, why don't you do this in a game? And that alludes back to what I said earlier. Why would you, if you're that dominant and it's almost a guaranteed 25 points a night, just posting him up? You're obviously, if you're a smart coach, that's what you're going to do. He did take a couple threes as a senior, in a couple games that were out of hand. Did make one of those. Wasn't it banked in. It wasn't like it was a precision shot, but the shot looked good coming out of his hand, and he's got a nice form. Go back to the free throw shooting. It's not an ugly foul shot. It looks clean when he releases, and I think that he'll surprise some people with the range that he has, or is going to have in the NBA. Now, him getting a shot off is not, the quickest release you're ever going to see, but he's 7'5". He's gonna be able to shoot over the top of most people in that case. But I also think that just what he gives you, he can probably go in and give you 10 points playing in the post as an kind of alternative, I guess, to a Domantas Sabonis. Everybody remembers around here Sabonis from his time with the Pacers and the triple doubles and all the different things he can do. That's not Zach Edey, but he's a guy that can score at will, probably will be able to against most players in the NBA, even if it's only playing 8 to 10 minutes a night. But he's also going to be a guy that's probably got some parts of his game that's wherever he goes is a place that's going to see that and say, hey, we have a lot of different use for this guy. You're not going to waste a draft pick in the first round on somebody that you don't think is going to come in and help you right away.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. What is your perspective on Zach's ability, you think, to make an immediate impact in the NBA? I know the NBA is a completely different game, but someone who is older and more firm in what they do, how do you think he can immediately impact any team that he's on?
The thing that's interesting is you mentioned pick 13 and what to do with that. I've heard his name as high as 9, anywhere from 9 to 19, 9 to 25. I've asked Zach, and he said, you know what? I've heard everything there is to hear. I don't really care. If somebody picks me, it's because they want me. And that's what makes me encouraged to go to a franchise that is willing to use that pick on me, because they see something in me. And, there's a reason that that team is going to draft me. So wherever he goes remains to be seen. And I think he's been all over the board more than anybody else. But there are teams I know that are willing to trade up into the teens if he's still around, maybe in that 15 to 18 type range. So he's going to go somewhere, and it's going to be relatively high. Whether he's a lottery pick or not remains to be seen. But he's definitely got a use, and a lot of GMs in the NBA who I assume are smarter than I am or you are on this topic, know that he's got to use somehow in the NBA.
Finally, Sam, I mean, when you're looking at it's always fun to revisit drafts 3, 4, 5 years after the fact and talk about that player and what people thought they were going to be to what they turned into and whether or not it's fun to see players that were picked in the 20s that people are going, what in the heck were you doing? How did that guy fall to 20? And that might be the case with Zach Edey. How did this guy fall to 18 when he was clearly one of the best centers in the draft class? How do you think in 4 or 5 years? Well, let's do 4 because you covered 4 years of him at Purdue. In 4 years from now, when he's in his senior season in the NBA, if that's such a thing, how do you think we're going to be talking about him, and how do you think people are going to be talking about him at the NBA level?
I really think that, and I don't cover the NBA, but I watch the NBA. But I think that he's a guy who will have an extended career and probably be a very good role player for a long time. He might play a decade in the NBA without ever being an all-star or anything like that, but he's going to have an extended career in the NBA playing for somebody. It might be multiple teams, depending on, every time there's a coaching change somewhere, that coach comes in and wants their own guys. And then depending on, in this case, if he's in Sacramento, where Sacramento is and feels like we've got a window to win now, but we've got to make a trade. And then some other franchise says, we want this guy. Okay, we're willing to give it up. But he's going to be a guy that can produce for teams for quite some time, even in a league where it's more wide open, 5-out type of offense. I think that there's still a place somewhere for a 7'5" guy who can make free throws, can block shots, can shoot jump shots with consistency, and then can just still post up and dominate at will.
Well, I'm pretty sure no matter what team takes him, all NBA fans, period, are just going to be watching the draft to find out and see where he ends up. And he's going to be watched very closely in Summer League, I have a feeling. Maybe it'll be in Sacramento. Maybe it'll be in elsewhere. But if you have any interest in Purdue basketball, Sam King is covering it. So make sure you check that out and follow that for future prospects that come out of Purdue, plus the Boilermakers in their run to try for another national championship. Sam, thank you so much, my friend, for joining me here on the podcast. I really appreciate your insight, and we'll see where Zach goes on draft night.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Like I said at the top of the show, today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. As you can tell, I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop, but the playoffs are over. We're getting fewer games. We're getting no games for NBA basketball. Thank God we have the WNBA to carry us through. The sports just aren't sporting right now the way that I want them to. It's kind of that weird dead time in summer. No disrespect to baseball or the WNBA or anything like that, but the fall sports are truly gone. We got football coming. Basketball's getting closer and closer with every passing day, and FanDuel lets me keep the sport going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime that I am in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Big thank you to Sam for making time here on draft week to appear on the Locked On Kings podcast and share that perspective on Zach Edey. Before I share with you my thoughts on Zach, what are yours? I want to know, has your perspective or has your mind at all changed with Zach after hearing that conversation? Are you pro drafting him? Are you against drafting him? There's great arguments for both sides, and let's hash those out and let's talk about it. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Or, of course, you can leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Zach Edey still is in a group of players that I would say I would not mind the Kings taking him at 13. I would completely prefer the Kings take Zach Edey over taking a guard, unless that guard has wing potential like a Jacoby Walter, for example. That being said, I still think if the Kings are going to draft a player, they need to prioritize wings because they need to prioritize wings this offseason, period. They need more guys with size. They don't necessarily need 7'4", but hey, 6'9", 6'10", That would be an ideal range, maybe 6'8". That would be an ideal range of height for the Sacramento Kings to look for in the position that they need more depth of. But look, what Sam said there in that conversation that really resonated with me and stood out to me is he thinks that Zach Edey will translate into a really, really solid role player in the NBA for a long and successful career. And if he's right about that, in many ways at 13, I'll be honest with you, that's exactly what I'm looking for. My perspective, and maybe it's honestly too low, but I'm not looking for a starter at 13. I'm not expecting that. I'm looking for a impactful role player who hopefully has a chance, and maybe not an expectation, but has a chance to make a winning impact on the Sacramento Kings immediately, right? They're in a win now window. That doesn't mean they can't draft a player who's going to be more of a project and a developmental piece like a Ron Holland, for example. I love him as a wing. I love his size, and he's someone that's probably a little bit more of a project coming out of the G League Ignite. So I don't think the Kings can't go that route necessarily, but I think they should be looking to add players to their roster that ultimately will help them accomplish their goal right now, which is win in a very difficult Western Conference. I think Zach Edey can do that for 10 to 12 minutes a night. Right. I'm not worried about Sabonis being on this roster, going out and drafting Zach Edey, because I'm not looking at Zach Edey as a starting center. I'm looking at Zach Edey as a guy who can come in and play 10 to 12 minutes a night when Domantas Sabonis is taking a breather. He secures rebounds. He protects the rim, blocks shots with his size. I know there's concerns about his perimeter defense, and rightfully so, because of how big he is and how will he handle a defense stretching him out. Like, I don't think Zach Edey's a guy you could really ever play against a Milwaukee Bucks team, for example, with Brook Lopez out on the perimeter. But Zach is someone who I could see playing 10 to 12 minutes a night and just filling that role and doing what the Sacramento Kings need on the offensive end, getting offensive rebounds and putbacks for 6 points a night. If that's what he does, like, the Kings could absolutely use that. Now, could they find better at 13? Probably. Some would say, hopefully. Again, I still think the Kings should consider trading the pick instead of taking Zach Edey or any rookie at this point in time. So Zach Edey is certainly not my first choice. There are other players ahead of him that I'd rather take, like Tristan da Silva, for example. But I don't hate the idea of Zach Edey in Sacramento. I do think, though, Sam shared in that interview that he knows for a fact that there are teams that will attempt to move up and try and trade up in the draft to get Zach if he's there in the teens range. Maybe the Kings can take advantage of that with a draft night trade. I do think there are going to be suitors for him. And if it's not here in Sacramento, I'm very interested and anxious to see where he lands and where he goes. So consider me interested in Zach Edey, intrigued by Zach Edey in a lot of ways. Would not hate to see him here in a Kings uniform. I don't think it's going to happen unless the Kings saw something in the pre-draft workout that was like, oh man, this is really, really good. I just think that there are better options out there for the Kings. So I would be pretty surprised, I think, if Zach Edey was the selection at 13. But hey, stranger things have happened. It's the draft. You never know. And ultimately, if that's the guy that you want, if he's your guy at 13, it doesn't matter what other mocks say. It doesn't matter how early you take him. If he's the guy, go out and get him. So we'll see what Monte McNair and the Kings decide to do. But I'm very interested. Again, if you want to share your thoughts on where you think Edey is going to go, or if you think the Kings should consider taking Edey, hit me up on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. Email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comment section down below. Tomorrow, the day before the draft, NBA Draft Eve, right? I'll share with you my final thoughts, predictions, what I would want the Kings to do, specifically what I want the Kings to do on draft night. I have that all for you in kind of a final NBA draft preview coming tomorrow on the Locked On Kings podcast. Plus, I'll share with you what I decided to do in our annual Locked On mock draft, where the each host of their show is responsible for their pick, and you can either trade the pick or you can make a selection. Well, a little bit of a spoiler alert. I've been preaching about the Kings trading the pick for so long. How could I not make a trade? I did come up with a trade. I'm actually really, really happy with it. So I'll share that with you on tomorrow's Locked On Kings podcast as well. And then on Wednesday, I'll be at the Golden One Center inside the Kings practice facility watching the draft. We'll talk to Monte McNair after the first round. I'll have a podcast there from the Global One Center after draft night is wrapped up. So busy week of NBA draft action for you here on Locked On Kings. Can't wait to have you join me all week long. Until next time, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.